up on this Monday edition of Newsline at noon, President Park Geun-hye faces a serious leadership test with a reform drive derailed in the wake of two failed prime minister nominations. The government will introduce major changes in sectors ranging from finance to social welfare in the latter half of the year, rewriting some 160 regulations. Plus, in Brazil World Cup, the Netherlands and Costa Rica advance to the quarterfinals where they will face each other. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. It's noon Monday, June 30th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in live from Seoul. I'm Ju.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this lunchtime, President Park Geun-hye is facing the most serious test of her leadership thus far, with her approval rating plunging after her administration's poor handling of the ferry disaster in April and her failure to find a suitable prime minister.
This has many wondering whether she has enough time to push through her envisioned reform drive and help the ruling party improve its chances in some critical by-elections at the end of July. Our Ji Myung-kil reports.
President Park is racing against time to win back support from voters before a by-election on July 30th, with many political pundits saying her party has a good chance of losing its majority in parliament. An outcome like that would cripple her efforts to push through legislation aimed at spurring economic recovery, overhauling government systems, and stamping out social ills accumulated during a rapid, headlong drive toward industrialization over the past several decades. President Park's plan was to give a fresh impetus to her reform drive by shaking up her cabinet, but she ran into problems after her two prime minister nominees resigned one after another in the face of public criticism over morality and controversial remarks on history. The president's approval rating stood near 60% in March, but as of the end of June, the number is hovering around 48%, the lowest since she took office in 2013. The Park administration has been making reforms, but has made little progress. Since the Seoul ferry disaster, President Park has tried to overhaul the government safety system by dismantling the Korea Coast Guard and setting up a new safety management bureau directly under the Prime Minister's office. As part of efforts to end the cozy ties between the public and private sector, she also tried to keep retired government officials from landing jobs in companies, which has contributed to sloppy safety checks. Critics have also advised President Park to communicate more with the ruling Saenuri Party and the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy. But with confirmation hearings for new cabinet members taking place at the National Assembly through next week and July's by-elections just around the corner, the president may have to come up with new tactics to regain the people's trust. Ji Myung-kil, Arirang News.
Now, President Park, who last week pledged to name a new presidential secretary to oversee personnel management, says her office will maintain a pool of talented candidates at all times and keep track of their verification records. At the first meeting of her senior secretary since retaining her prime minister following two nomination failures, President Park also asked the political parties to seek ways to improve the confirmation hearing process. As for a recent shooting spree at a general outpost near the inter-Korean border, the president said she was sorry that the incident happened, then asked the military to determine what caused the incident, who should take responsibility, and to come up with preventive measures. A formal investigation into the Seoul ferry disaster is currently underway at the National Assembly. The parliamentary committee overseeing the probe began a special session at 10 this morning and is questioning various ministries on whether they have done enough in dealing with the ferry accident. The ministries, including the Security Ministry and the Defense Ministry, have turned in reports on how they responded to the deadly disaster. A probe is set to continue until Wednesday.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has vowed that no violations of territorial integrity will be tolerated and says no nation should be allowed to monopolize global affairs. Watchers say his recent comments can be seen as a thinly veiled attack on the United States. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has stressed that the sovereignty and territorial integrity of a nation should be respected. His comments came during an event marking the 60th anniversary of a mutual peace agreement between China, Myanmar, and India. The 1954 agreement called for mutually respecting sovereignty and territorial integrity, as well as mutual non-aggression and non-interference in domestic affairs.
Sovereignty and territorial integrity should not be infringed upon. This is a basic principle that should not be ignored.
The comments come as China is locked in territorial disputes with neighboring countries such as Japan, the Philippines, and Vietnam. In a national meeting late last week, the leader said China should not forget its humiliating past as a victim of foreign aggression and called for stronger border defense. It was seen to target Tokyo in particular, which has been at odds with Beijing over territorial as well as historical disputes. He also stressed that China will not seek hegemony, no matter how strong it becomes.
China does not acknowledge the notion that a country will seek hegemony when it grows in strength. Hegemony or militarism is not the genes of China.
The Chinese leader also said the right of a country to choose its own social system and path of development should be respected. That remark was seemingly his way of telling the West to keep out of China's domestic affairs. The Chinese president, however, did not mention North Korea's nuclear weapons or the Korean peninsula during his speech. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea. Connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on NEWSLINE at Noon with Mark Broom and Jin-ju.
I'm Jin-ju.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, and Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about.
There are a number of changes afoot for Korea in the second half of the year. These cover everything from the basic pension system to social welfare and health care. Shin Se-min gives us a rundown of some of the changes on the way.
The government on Sunday issued a list of changes to 160 regulations and systems in 27 government departments. The list will be posted and distributed on central, local, and municipal government websites starting Monday, and the changes will take effect in the second half of the year. The changes cover pensions for the elderly, more leave for working moms, and harsher punishments for child abusers. One of the changes is related to data collection and follows a series of major security breaches in recent months. The new rule bans public institutions and private enterprises from illegally collecting citizens' identification numbers. Institutions with security breaches will be fined up to $500,000 even if the data was collected legally. Another change has to do with the pension system. Elderly people over the age of 65 who are in the lower 70% income bracket will be granted a maximum basic pension of nearly $200 a month starting in August. In the legal sector, starting in late September, child abusers will face stronger punishments. A child abuse victim will be isolated from his or her assailant, and for the first time, child abuse victims will be provided with legal counsel, previously only allowed for adult victims of sexual violence. Working women juggling home and work life who are the mothers of twins will be granted 30 extra days of maternity leave, giving them a 4-month break. And in the agriculture sector, area of origin labeling for pork will be enforced to ensure safe distribution and improve epidemics prevention efforts. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Few manufacturers here in Korea seem confident after the deadly ferry disaster in April dented already sluggish consumer spending. The Bank of Korea says the business sentiment index for June remains subdued, coming in at 77, down from the 79 tallied a month ago. That marks the second straight month of decline since the ferry sinking. Now, we're reading below the benchmark 100 means pessimists outnumber optimists. The central bank says sluggish domestic demand, a strong local currency, and a slowdown in emerging economies led the drop. But things look quite different for Korea's job market. It seems to be faring well. Job creation is expected to top 500,000 this year, marking the highest gain in 12 years. The Korea Development Institute says the nation will likely add between 400,000 to 480,000 new jobs in the second half of the year. Although the figure is a sharp decline from a year-on-year job growth of over 600,000 in the first half of this year, the job growth for the entire year is forecast to exceed the government's target of 450,000. It's expected to be the largest jump since 2002, when just under 600,000 new jobs were created.
Now, smokers have it pretty good here in Korea. Cigarette prices are the lowest among OECD countries, and while there has been lots of talk of raising tobacco prices for a long time, they have remained the same for about 10 years. But it seems like enough is enough now, as related ministries are making much more active efforts to make sure a price hike is finally pushed through. Kwon So-ah reports.
Just last week, Korea's Ministry of Health and Welfare released a shocking anti-smoking advertisement in the hope it would convince smokers to kick their habit. At a recent symposium held on World No Tobacco Day, the ministry said it will actively push ahead with the World Health Organization's recommendation to raise cigarette prices to bring down the country's high smoking rate. In Korea, you pay 2,500 won, or roughly $2.50 for a pack of 20 cigarettes. That's the cheapest out of the 41 OECD nations. A pack of cigarettes is more than 6 times more expensive in Norway than it is in Korea. Medical experts say the relation between the price of tobacco and quitting cannot be ignored. In fact, 10 years ago, when the price of cigarettes went up by around 50 cents, the smoking rate among men in Korea dropped from 58% in 2004 to 44% just 2 years later. But there's a reason why the government has failed on a number of occasions to push through with a raise. There are concerns people in the low-income bracket will be hit hardest, since a cigarette price hike also means a tax hike. The tax paid on tobacco products is the same for high or low-income people. Tobacco tax is also paid indirectly, meaning the tax is not collected by the government, but by tobacco companies. But as Finance Minister nominee Choi Kyung-hwan has said, although there is a perception welfare is placing a higher tax burden on the people, cigarette prices must be raised for the sake of public health. Last year, Korea's smoking rate was the second highest among OECD members, barely trailing Greece. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
The nation's leading mobile messaging service, KakaoTalk, has risen to third place in brand value, backed by a market share of over 90% in the sector. KakaoTalk garnered over 915 points out of 1,000 in the second quarter on market researcher Brandstock's top index, putting it in third among the 100 brands surveyed. Samsung's Galaxy smartphone topped the list for the fourth year in a row, followed by discount chain Emart, which has come second for the last 2 years. KakaoTalk's brand competitiveness is expected to strengthen even further after a merger with Daum Communications, the nation's second largest internet portal. Korea's leading construction company, Hyundai Engineering and Construction, won its third contract in Venezuela on Monday. The company says it has sealed a $4.84 billion contract to expand a refinery for state-run oil company PDVSA in conjunction with affiliate Hyundai Engineering and China's Wison Engineering. Hyundai E&C owns the majority of this mega deal with a share of 73%. The order calls for an expansion and upgrade of existing refineries in the South American country. The facility is located about 250 kilometers from the capital, Caracas, and the project is expected to take just short of 4 years. Hyundai E&C entered Latin America back in 2010 and Venezuela 2 years ago.
Making sure that spent nuclear fuel is stored safely is crucial in using nuclear energy, but this part is becoming a problem for Korea as storage facilities are nearing their saturation point. And as our Polly explains, time is running out to find a solution.
When petroleum is burned, it releases carbon dioxide. But when coal briquettes are burned, you're left with ashes. Nuclear energy is similar to briquettes in this sense. When 100 kilograms of uranium is spent, the nuclear waste produced is almost equal in amount, and it comes with radioactivity and extreme heat. So the fuel is stored in a nearby cistern and cooled. The problem here in Korea is that some of these temporary facilities will be full to the brim in the next few years. These are the current levels at some plants. The Gori nuclear plant in Busan, the nation's oldest, stands at 70% capacity, Wolseong at 75, Hanbit at 65, and Hanul at 62. Although the construction of new plants has given Korea some time to spare, experts say the deadline is 2024. Korea has a total of 23 nuclear plants and some 700 tons of spent fuel is produced each year. Without a solution in the next 10 years, the nuclear plants will have to be shut down and Korea will face a risk of a blackout. The construction of interim storage facilities is currently being considered as the most plausible solution.
As there is a master plan to permanently dispose of or reprocess spent fuel, I believe a time frame needs to be clarified for the construction of interim storage facilities.
Some 20 countries worldwide operate interim storage facilities. An independent committee was formed last year and is seeking advice and ideas from experts. They plan to decide on how to deal with the issue by the end of the year. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the international headlines we're following at this hour. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, who's standing by at the news center.
Eunice, the Sunni militant group waging a violent blitz through northern Iraq has formally declared the creation of an Islamic caliphate.
That's right, Chinju. That's, of course, been the stated goal of ISIL militants for a long time. And in an audio file circulated online, a spokesman for the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant is heard announcing the creation of the self-dubbed Islamic State that stretches from northern Syria to Iraq's Diyala province, much of which is already under militant control. He also called on Muslims everywhere, not just those living in the now Sunni-controlled areas, to swear allegiance to ISIL leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. The new state would be ruled under a strict interpretation of Sharia law, and the announcement comes on the first day of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, and as Iraqi forces fought to retake the northwestern city of Tikrit that had fallen to militants nearly 20 days ago. The Baghdad government claimed victory earlier today, but some residents of Saddam Hussein's hometown say they saw no Iraqi troops. A series of churches were attacked and burned down on Sunday in Nigeria. Suspected Boko Haram militants stormed at least 3 churches, The Guardian reports, killing dozens of men, women, and children near Chibok. Residents said about 20 men in a truck and motorcycles drove into town armed with bombs and guns. There is no definitive figure on the number of casualties at this time. A state of emergency is in place in northern Nigeria following near daily raids by suspected Boko Haram militants. They have killed hundreds in recent months in the name of creating an Islamic State. A shocking act of demonstration in Japan. A 50-year-old man set himself on fire Sunday afternoon at Tokyo's busy Shinjuku station in protest of the Shinzo Abe administration's pursuit of the so-called right to collective self-defense. The rare act of self-immolation came after an hour-long criticism through a loudspeaker Eyewitnesses say the suited man then poured flammable liquid over himself and set himself alight. Firefighters tried to save him and eventually pulled him into an ambulance. Critics to Abe's push to remilitarize have been waging mostly peaceful protests, arguing the move would undermine Japan's war-renouncing constitution. And finally, U.S. President Barack Obama will seek some $2 billion in emergency funds to address a noted surge in illegal child migration from Central America. More than 52,000 unaccompanied children entering the U.S. have been taken into custody since October, striking what's being called an urgent humanitarian situation. The White House says it will make the request in a letter to Congress on this Monday. Obama will also ask for legal authorities to apply fast-track deportation procedures and apply stiffer penalties to those who smuggle children across the border.
And a good Monday morning to you all as we kick things off with the South Korean national football team as the Taeguk Warriors return to Korea after their World Cup in Brazil. And their return was welcomed with a mixed response as an unruly person threw a taffy at the players while others shouted that it's okay. Midfielder Son Heung-min stated that they were unprepared for the World Cup, while Koo Ja-chul was more optimistic, stating that it was an experience to be learned. Meanwhile, manager Hong Myung-go added that he will decide on his future shortly, as many speculate that he will resign as the head coach. And let's continue on with our 2014 Brazil World Cup action, starting off with an exciting match which took place earlier today. The Netherlands taking on Mexico. Let's take a look at the highlights. Now, it started out rather slow with both sides scoreless after the first half, but Giovanni Dos Santos scores the first goal of the match, giving Mexico the 1-0 lead. Now, Mexico had it in the bag, but Wesley Sneijder in the 88th minute finds the back of the net for the equalizer. Now, the match looked like it was going into extra time, but a penalty is called in the dying seconds of the match as Huntelaar scores the game winner, helping the Netherlands advance to the quarterfinals with a 2-1 win. Meanwhile, with Greece taking on Costa Rica, scoreless first half, but Brian Ruiz in the 52nd minute gives Costa Rica the 1-0 lead. Now, both sides looking quite defensive the rest of the way, but another last-minute equalizer, this time by Socrates Papastolopoulos. And as the match goes into the penalty shootout, Costa Rica goes perfect on the spot kick, beating the Greek side 5-3 to advance to the next round. And now let's take a look at the exciting finishes from the previous day, including Brazil and Chile, who both fought hard till the end. Now, taking a look at the scores here, a couple of first half goals had both sides tied at 1 apiece, and even after the extra time, no winner. But some dramatic penalty as several key missed spot kicks led to Neymar scoring the deciding kick as the host nation advanced with a 3-2 penalty victory. Meanwhile, Uruguay without Luis Suarez didn't look threatening at all as Colombia's James Rodriguez scores twice in this match, helping Colombia win it 2-0. And now finishing things off, we continue on with our ever so controversial biting incident of Luis Suarez, who's been, of course, suspended for his actions against Giorgio Chiellini last week. Because now, according to a new report, it might not have been his third offense, but his 8th. According to the England's Daily Star, Luis Suarez, during his youth football days, bit 5 other players on the pitch. So, of course, when he was just 14 years of age. Now, the report added that those previous incidents were also reported to FIFA and that the 4-month ban was not enough to punish the star. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good afternoon. Well, it seems like the last day of June will be another hot and humid day. Temperatures will continue to be on the warm side with highs rising to 30 degrees Celsius across the region. But there is a chance of sporadic showers in the central region and the eastern parts of the peninsula in the afternoon, and thunder and lightning can be rolled out. And for this week, the top temperatures will be hovering around 30 degrees Celsius throughout the week here in the capital. capital, while Jeju and southern coastal regions will be affected by monsoon rains starting Wednesday. With that in mind, here are the readings for today. The afternoon high in the capital in Daegu will rise to 30, while Gwangju will soar to 31, and Busan should make it to 27 in the afternoon. And for other regions, down on Jeju and Daejeon should see a high of 27 and 30 respectively, and Dokdo will reach 22. Well, that's all for me today, and hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you very much, Jion, for the weather there. And those are the stories we're following at this hour.
Mark and I will be back at the same time tomorrow. Thank you for watching.